Let me ask this. What is the excitement level for Jeremy Roach announcing his decision to return to Duke? We're going to discuss that and some other questions. We've got a mailbag edition of Locked On Blue Devils. Excited to get it going right now.
Hi, everybody. Dick Vitale. Hey, make sure you listen, man, to Locked On Blue Devils with J.J. Jackson. He's awesome, baby.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. My name is JJ Jackson. I hope that you're doing well here today on Tuesday, May 23rd, 2023. Locked On Blue Devils, of course, is your daily podcast devoted to everything going on in the life of Duke athletics. On today's show, we've got a mailbag edition due up. You've been sending in your questions. They've been amazing. Send us an email, lockedonbluedevils@gmail.com, or you could simply send it to us on Twitter at LO_Blue Devils. And we'll answer your questions all throughout these episodes when we do mailbag editions of the program. Follow me on Twitter at _JJ_Jackson_. Be sure to follow and subscribe to this podcast for free wherever you get your podcast. Also, make sure that you subscribe on YouTube to watch the show daily each and every day. Without further ado, very excited to bring on my good pal and colleague, Josh Cox from Duke Football Talks Section 17 podcast. Josh, I hope all is well. We're starting to get a better concrete idea of what the roster is going to look like for Duke, and really excited to dive into some of these mailbag questions.
Yeah, mailbag's one of my favorite things that we do, JJ, and I know during the middle of football and basketball season, it's tough to get to mailbags every now and then, but always a good time and looking forward to talking about it for sure.
Yeah, let's dive right in then. Here's our first question coming in today. We were asked, is it a big deal that Duke is the only Power 5 school to not lose a player in the transfer portal? We talked about this exclusively with Mr. Trotter from 24/7 Sports a few weeks back. Jeff Goodman was the first to kind of report this out there, but you think that's a big deal?
I mean, listen, in the landscape of college basketball right now, with so many guys leaving and so many guys for various reasons, right? For people can look at it, selfishly or unselfishly, it doesn't matter. There are good reasons and probably bad reasons for people to transfer to another school. And even before this, right before the landscape changed, it was not uncommon for Duke to have players to transfer out. I mean, we've had that take place, for the last 25 years, within the program and further back even. And so for Coach Scheyer to come in his first season, to see the success that he saw, to make some difficult choices, honestly, in playing time and guys that came in, like you and I have talked all year about Jaden Shoot, and to see a kid like that come in, not get the playing time that he was hoping to get, and still decide to stay, it has to be something that we applaud Coach Scheyer and the rest of the staff for, because at the end of the day, these guys come to Duke, they're recruited by Duke, Duke wants these guys to stay, and the fact that something in that culture this past 12 months has convinced every single person on that roster to either go pro or to stay that is a feat in 2023 for sure.
Yeah, it's crazy to see how many players have entered the transfer portal across the sport. To see in the ACC alone, Josh, it's between 10 and 15 players have ultimately decided just to switch. Yeah. ACC schools, a lot of guys it feels like trades are happening with the interconference movement that's taking place. And for Duke to not be involved in that whatsoever is kind of mind-boggling, honestly. So kudos to Jon Scheyer and his staff for the work that they have done. It's definitely difficult to get these folks to buy into what you're trying to do, but they've clearly done a good job right out of the gates. All right, moving on. Okay, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. The only thing I was going to say is, and I want to reiterate that. This is, people were always asking, what's the difference? What's going to be the difference between a Coach K coach team and a Scheyer coach team?
Right.
And I'm not saying it's for better or for worse here, but I just my opinion here, I don't know if the way minutes were distributed in the Coach K environment and the way Scheyer handled this team this year would have been the same. And then I think the resulting fallout of those decisions, like I believe a Coach K coach team in 2023 would have had someone or two transfer. And I'm not saying that in a critical way. I'm just saying it is the difference. Shire seems to be a little bit more of a player's coach. He seems to play his bench a little bit more. He seems to keep a little bit more of like, I want to keep these guys happy. And once again, you can think either way on that. But I believe it is a little bit of a unique thing to Coach Shire in comparison to Coach K.
All right, moving on. What is the latest on the Boozer twins? Who should we be worried about trying to get them instead of us? That came in from a devil in a blue dress on Twitter who always sends in great questions. So kind of a recruiting question. I'm going to send this your way, Joe. I know how deep you're plugged into these high school recruiting efforts out there, but the Boozer twins is a significant one. So what's the latest that you've seen, man?
Well, since I run a football podcast, I can confidently say that I am more in tune to basketball recruiting, though, than I am football recruiting because it's a little bit easier to follow.
Less players to keep up with.
Yeah, fewer decommits, like all that kind of stuff. But, yeah, so obviously we know that Carlos Boozer's sons, Cameron is the number one player in the 2025 class. His twin brother Caden is, most places a top 20, 25 guy. And they have a lot of offers. Some of them, seemingly are going to not really make it to the end. I mean, I would assume your Floridas and your Florida States and people like that are going to eventually fall off that list. Obviously like an Arkansas State. I mean, I'm looking at the list of their offers right now. Yeah. They're going to fall off, but I think there's a couple of legitimate offers there. Michigan is sitting there with an offer. That's obviously it's a Jordan Brand school. I mean, there's a lot of positive things there. You've got Miami, and I know on historical basketball, that's not a huge deal, but what Larinaga has done there and the success that he's had, and we have to talk about NIL, right? We have to talk about that a little bit. They have been known not to just help you get deals, but they are going to give you, like through their collective, they're paying Nigel Pack hundreds of thousands of dollars to play for them. And so I think Miami's got to be in the conversation. And then here recently, within the last just few days, we've seen two heavy hitters come in, and that's Kentucky and UNC. And so I believe between Michigan, Miami, Kentucky, UNC, we have to keep our eyes on those. Now, I would love to hear from you, JJ, about what can we think of another scenario where there's a former player's kid and he's recruited by both Duke and UNC, right? Has that ever been a scenario, right, where you have sons of a player from UNC, go to Duke, or sons of a player from Duke go to UNC? Yeah,
that's difficult. That is an amazing thought exercise to think about, right? I mean, because there have been several NBA guys whose players have been recruited by both, right? Like Austin Rivers is one of the top players in the country, but Doc doesn't have an affiliation to Duke or UNC. So,
and then you have the brothers. You have
right.
Jeff Cable come to Duke, Jason Cable goes to UNC, right?
Sure.
I mean,
Sure. On the spot, though, I don't know that has been something that's taken place. If we're missing anybody, of course, you and I are kind of on the timer here. Folks might have a little bit more time watching or listening to us to dig up a little bit. Let us know in the comments because that's a really interesting sort of thought exercise. The latest on Duke and all of this appears to just be that they're very active and that rightfully so, John Shire wants to get this done. Carlos Boozer was a heck of a player for Duke, a national champion for the Blue Devils. But who to be concerned with, I think Miami is the one right there as well. It's important to point out also that the Boozer twins currently play in Miami. They've grown up there in the Miami area. So it's kind of right there in the backyard with a lot of family around. But I think Duke should feel good about where they're at. Right. I'm going to believe that Duke is in a good spot until we hear that they aren't.
So, and I would agree with you. Everything seems to be pointing that direction, or it looks like this. Everything seems to flow through Durham for them, right? And so if for some reason they wind up at Miami, it's going to be something that pulls them away from Durham. I think Duke has that edge. I think, Carlos Boozer has kept a really close relationship with the program throughout the years, even while he was in the NBA, and then now, with the ACC network and all the other work that he does. stays very connected with the program, K Academies, all those types of things you see him around. And so I believe that obviously he probably selfishly, really hopes that they follow in his footsteps, continues that legacy here in Durham. And then one of the things we have to realize is you're going to have Cameron that's going to come in for a brief pit stop. It's going to be 1 year and he's gone. But Caden, there's a good chance he's going to be a multi-year guy. And so I think that while I know Cameron's getting all the accolades, and rightfully so, I mean, the kid is amazing. I think that, that second year for his brother may be something that factors into this decision a little bit more than what people think. And so once again, I think you see Filipowski come back for a second year, Martin Mitchell come back for a second year. I think a second year at Duke is not something that would be out of the equation, and I think it could help in the long run.
Yeah, let's see what happens. Ultimately, we're going to be following it a lot. That's still 2 classes away, right? We've still got this upcoming 2024 class, and then those guys along with Cooper Flagg right now in the class of 2025, unless things start to reclassify and that would be one heck of a class if you're able to get all those guys.
Let me tell you something. I don't know if Cooper Flagg and Cameron Booz are committed to the same college, that would there's not a more dominant right now like high school duo than those two guys.
Not too shabby if that were to take place. Not at all. All right, let's take our first time out on the program and we'll continue our conversation here in just a moment. Locked On Blue Devils here today is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. We're in the heart of the NBA playoffs, and you want to make it a fast break right now to FanDuel during the NBA playoffs, because right now new customers can get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's $1,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. No better place to bet on all the playoff action than America's #1 sports book. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel is an official sports betting partner of the NBA. As we move forward here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils, it's a mailbag edition of the program. JJ Jackson alongside Josh Cox. Thanks again to our sponsor there at FanDuel. And the NBA playoffs do continue to move forward. Congratulations to Jack White and the Denver Nuggets making a trip to the NBA Finals after they swept LeBron James and the LA Lakers. And the entire conversation in the sports world right now, Josh, is whether or not LeBron James is going to retire after 20 years of playing basketball. He had some pretty eyebrow-raising comments after the team was eliminated.
Yeah, the only thing I'll say about that is if there's one player in the NBA who knows exactly what his words are going to mean,
like
and
the
are going to be taken as, correct. It's LeBron James. He knew that was very calculated. There's a reason for that. I don't know what the reason is. I do know that LeBron is physically capable of playing basketball for a few more years, and we all know, that Bronny is heading to USC for what's probably one season. So, I don't know what his angle is, but there is an angle, and listen, he's earned it. He's earned the ability to do that. And so it'll be interesting to see what this offseason looks like.
Yeah, a lot of people trying to speculate whether or not he'll be playing next year. So we'll leave that for another day, however. So let's keep going here in the mailbag. Tease this one right out of the gates, but a really good question coming in here from Blue Devil Basketball Rocks asking, what's the excitement level for Jeremy Roach returning to Duke? Kind of talked about it a good bit last week when the news came through, but just from a pure excitement level perspective, where did you sit when you saw that news?
Well, there's two things here in play for me. Number one, it was unheard of in Duke basketball history that a team captain who was a junior in good standing with the program, who probably wasn't going to go pro, right? Like I think we kind of all saw that, was even considering doing anything else. And once again, we spoke to it with the first question, the landscape of college basketball in 2023, you never know. You never know. And so I fully respected Jeremy's ability to test the waters, whether that was NBA, whether that was overseas, or whether that was to transfer. Like, he obviously had multiple options that he could have chosen.
Right.
And so for Duke to not only return, Mark Mitchell, Kyle Filipowski, and others, but to also return a player the caliber of Jeremy Roach, a player who has been there 2 years ago was one of the team leaders that led that team to the Final Four in that run that they had. He was instrumental in many games last season. In fact, you could argue, and nothing ever came out about this, but he tweaked that toe or his foot sometime during the middle of the season, and I don't believe he was the same player since then. There would be a couple of times where if you watched off the ball, it would seem like he was, favoring his foot a little bit. And so for him to come back and hopefully be fully healthy, be a senior, and to be able to lead this team, man, how can you not be excited? I mean, he's going to be in that backcourt that's going to feature his teammate from last year in Tyrese Proctor, and then two guys, Jared McCain and Caleb Foster, coming in who are not coming in, to sit all season. They're coming in to play. And so I do think this, though. My excitement level is super high because I think there's going to be some clutch moments this year that we're going to need Jeremy Roach. I will temper that with I believe Jeremy and maybe to an extent Tyrese Proctor are going to have to understand that this year there might be a minutes decline a tad, and meaning maybe they can give 110% for 30 minutes a game instead of 38 minutes a game, right? So I don't know. I do know that those two freshmen, we just spoke of Bronny James. Those two freshmen, Jared McCain and Caleb Foster, made the LA Times All-City team over Bronny James. So those guys are ballers, legit ballers. And so all that to say, I'm not complaining. We're going to have depth. I do think there's going to be some lineups where Coach Shire maybe runs 3 guards and we play smaller. So I can see 3 of those 4 guys on the court together every now and then. But ultimately, man, I'm so happy for Jeremy. I'm so glad he's back. And I'm glad he gets that final senior season where they can really be honored and Duke fans can show him appreciation.
Yeah, he certainly deserves it. He's done a lot for this program, and really excited to see what Jeremy Roach is going to be able to accomplish. Super excited was my excitement level when that news came through, although I am really curious what the guard rotation is going to look like, but we have got tons of time on our hands over the next few days, weeks, and months to kind of speculate on all of those things.
Well, and JJ too, I mean, this. What's one major thing that you've got to have if you're going to be successful deep into March and April, and that is depth. Yeah, because there's going to be injury, there's going to be a tweak here and there, there's going to be whatever. Listen, it's Duke. Somebody's foot is going to mess up between now and the time we start playing basketball. And so, like, to think like, oh, we don't need or we didn't really have. No, we need every talented basketball player that we could possibly get on our roster because we never know. And so, like, any Duke fan who's not excited about him coming back is kind of living in a different world.
One more break here on the program today, and then we'll wrap it up with a few more questions here on the mailbag episode of Locked On Blue Devils. Thanks so much for watching and supporting Locked On Blue Devils. Thank you for making us your first watch or first listen each and every day. If you haven't done so already, again, please hit that subscribe button. Follow us on Twitter at LO_Blue Devils. Follow me on Twitter at _JJ_Jackson_. Like our videos on YouTube. Leave us a 5-star rating and written review on your podcast platform of choice. All of those things continue to mean so much for us as you support us here on Locked On Blue Devils. Make sure you check out Locked On College Basketball as well with hosts Isaac Shade and Andy Patton. Those two guys, a 1-2 punch, a great duo breaking down everything that you need to know going on in the world of college basketball. While we're not seeing as much transfer portal news as we were a few weeks ago, there's still a lot out there. Could Duke potentially be adding someone else? We'll continue to talk about that, but they're doing the same over at Locked On College Basketball. Again, it's available wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube. Final few moments here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. JJ Jackson alongside Josh Cox from Duke Football Talks Section 17 podcast. All right, next question on our mailbag comes in. What is the draft stock for the Duke guys in the upcoming NBA draft? So that's talking about Dariq Whitehead and Derek Lively II. What do you think?
That's a tricky question, isn't it? I mean, I think I think obviously whenever you're talking about mock drafts and you're really talking about scenarios that play themselves out in the moment, right? Unless you have those, even the second pick, right? I mean, the Hornets are sitting there with the second pick. Everybody's like, oh, it's obviously going to be Scoot Henderson. Well, it's not obviously going to be Scoot Henderson. We don't know that, right? Like, we don't know for sure. And so whenever we're projecting where a Duke player could go, especially when they're not a top 5 lock, which neither one of these players are, it's really a shot in the dark. And so what you have to look for is which teams need the types of players that these guys are. And I believe Derek Lively is a little bit easier to see the need, right? You got teams that could use a defense first big man, rim protector. He's got a 7'7" wingspan. The amount of improvement he showed from December until the end of the season,
right,
was ridiculously incredible. So I actually believe that we're going to see Derek Lively's name go first between the two of them. Obviously, Derek had injury issues, and then he's found out here over the last few weeks that he had to get some other stuff fixed with that same injury, and he wasn't able to be a full participant in anything, and he was just able to meet with people. And so I believe that's going to I don't think it's going to help Derek's stock. So we could even see him bounce into the second round. It would not surprise me at all if he was not a first-round pick. And so I think Derek Lively could go as early as the end of the lottery, and then I think he could drop to the end of the first round. That's my thought for Derek Lively. And I have no clue where he would land, but I just know that he has a more defined skill set. Whitehead is that 6'6" wing that can defend, shoot, and he's versatile. I think he is going to be a late first round, early second round guy, just from what I've been seeing. And once again, listen, I'm not Shams or Woj or anything like that, but I do try to keep my tabs on it a little bit. I actually saw one, speaking of Lively, that had him as high as 10th. I think Dallas maybe has the 10th pick,
right,
and had him as high as 10 to the Mavs, which would be, that would be incredible. So that's where we're looking, though. I think middle first round, early second round, we're going to see both of those guys go sometime in there.
All right. Yeah. You hate the injury news, obviously, like you said, for Derek Whitehead, because that will unfortunately be a setback. But knowing how well he shot the basketball, there's such great value in him. And I think he could still sneak into the back of the first round. So that's what I'm hoping for with Derek. Hopefully that happens. One more question to go. Here we go. How deep might Duke's 2023-2024 rotation be with all of these returning players? Again, we're going to be talking about this for quite some time. They do have depth, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you've got a deep rotation with players that you're going to put out there on the floor.
I believe this is the year. Well, number one, the depth plays into the way I believe John Shire wants to coach. That's my opinion. I believe over the years between Jeff Capel and John Shire over the years, they would get a couple of games here and there where they would be the head coach when Coach K would be out with an illness or whatever. And I think we saw with both of those guys that they were both willing to play the bench a little bit more. And so I do believe this is going to work in Coach Shire's favor. So you have the graphic up here. We're kind of looking at this roster for 2022, 2023. 2023, 2024 is the one we're looking at. There is one spot open. That's not today's topic, but it does not look like, from what we're seeing, that we're going to be landing the Kansas big man.
That's been a roller coaster over the last few days.
That has been. And so I don't know that we're going to fill that 13th spot. If there's a guy out there, I've not heard his name. And so just looking at it, I do believe we could go 10 deep with this roster. I am concerned, I'll be honest with you, JJ, not about being good. I don't know that we can be elite national title. And I love him, and start Ryan Young at center. I don't know how that works. I don't think Filipowski is a 5. I don't think he defends the 5. He's a better wing defender than he is a post defender. And so I'm going to throw this out here, and I'm not crazy. Okay, I'm not crazy.
Okay.
It would not surprise me in seeing how Christian Reeves was recruited. He came in and everybody's like, oh, he's going to redshirt. He's just not going to play. He didn't redshirt. And I'm not saying this meant anything, but he played well in the blue-white game.
Right.
He came in and we saw he can fill the post. He's learning.
Yeah.
He went from a 3-star recruit to not having to redshirt. I don't know, but he seems like the kind of guy who could maybe take some huge steps forward in an offseason. And I'm not saying he's going to be a difference maker and put us – but listen, this is a program who sat Justin Robinson on the bench for 3 years.
Right.
And then finally in the senior year, we're like, oh, maybe we should play this guy. And so, like, maybe there's that scenario here, right, where Christian Reeves is 7'1", he steps into that role, and he flourishes. He's not going to be asked to do anything offensively except grab the ball when it's around you and dunk it if you're close to the basket. So I don't know. I'd love your thoughts on that, JJ, because the way that I look at the depth here, I see the wing depth, I see the guard depth, I see the depth at the 4. I don't see the 5, even though I see Ryan Young and Christian Reeves' name there. I love your thoughts kind of even on that.
Yeah, first and foremost, I had not thought about Justin Robinson in a while. I'm glad you brought him back up. The happy memories there with some of his UNC game highlights, for sure. But two, I think from the rotation perspective, we're still in a good spot for it actually to be a deep rotation. Mm-hmm. We talk depth. Obviously, that's there. You can see the talent level of these guys. But when you've got so many guards that in a lot of ways can be interchangeable out there, and then bodies – like a TJ Power, Sean Stewart, Mark Mitchell, similar body size and mold, like that has the opportunity for a rotation to be in place. And then sure, if it isn't another scholarship player coming in, right, if you use that 13th spot to give scholarship money to your walk-ons, great, they deserve it. They're such a big part of your program. Go for it. But I do think there is the outside chance, to your point, that Christian Reeves was productive, right? Like, I remember some of those dunks he had in the ACC tournament against Pittsburgh. Like, dude was obviously recruited to play basketball at Duke for some reason. That's how I walk away from a lot of this, is you were given a scholarship to play basketball at Duke for some reason. So I think it is feasible that, okay, with 12 guys, you can make the most out of those 12 guys.
Well, and I think you make a great point. And I'm just looking – as you were talking, I'm just counting this up. Okay, here's your top 8. Like, these 8 guys are going to be in a rotation. Okay, you have Ryan Young, Jeremy Roach, Kyle Filipowski, Mark Mitchell, Tyrese Proctor, Caleb Foster, Jared McCain, and Sean Stewart. Those 8 are going to be in the rotation.
For sure.
There's no question. That leaves TJ Power, Jaden Shute, Christian Reeves, Jalen Blakes. Once again, there's not one of those players that if you say this guy's playing in crunch time, I'm not mad about any one of those 4 players being on the court during an important possession. And so the depth, I mean, we talk about this, we're kind of deep 1 through 12. I mean, there's not – it's funny, when you go up like we did big on Pittsburgh in the ACC tournament, and you're like, okay, we're going to clear our bench.
Yeah.
And when you clear your bench of scholarship, when your final 5 scholarship players include TJ Power, Jalen Blakes, Jaden Shute, Christian Reeves, and probably Sean Stewart, you're probably still adding to your lead, right? Even when you're trying to play your worst scholarship players. And so Coach Shire has his work cut out for him. There's no doubt in my mind he does, but I would much rather Coach Shire have his work cut out for him choosing from 12 guys that can play meaningful minutes than us saying, man, we got these 6 right here, and maybe a couple of these other guys are going to step up and be able to provide us a little bit of depth. I love where the program's at.
I'm excited, and like we said, it's unfortunate that we're so far away from the season taking place, although in some ways we're not that far away. I do want people to keep in mind, June 1st, the NCAA opens up a practice period for Division I men's college basketball. So here we are on May 23rd. Josh, in a lot of ways, we're going to start to get that content of these Duke guys back out there on the practice floor when June 1st comes around.
Yeah, I love how the NBA has seemed to open their mind a little bit more to some rule changes on that stuff, and I think it makes perfect sense. And, yeah, hopefully we stay healthy in the offseason. We don't have any foot injuries.
Yeah.
And we come into the season healthy. But, once again, that's all the reason for the depth, right? If something happens to somebody – the reason why we just sat here and talked about 12 guys is for that reason. So
take care of your feet, people. That's our
exactly.
Take care of them. They're very important. Josh, appreciate the time as always, man. It's good to see you.
JJ, have a great day, man.
That's my pal Josh Cox from Duke Football Talk Section 17 podcast. Their show is available wherever you get your podcasts. Go make sure you support them and the great work that they're doing. That's going to do it for today's show. As always, go Duke. I'll talk to you tomorrow. My name is JJ Jackson. Thank you and good day.